Hi, this is Patrick Sullivan. Welcome to my shop. Okay, at this point, we've shaped several pieces of tool steel into blades for carving tools. Visually, I think they look pretty good. However, the steel is still relatively soft, and it won't hold an edge for very long. Next, we're going to harden the steel. This is a very simple process that takes about 1 minute per blade. In fact, it takes far longer to explain it than to actually do it. However, I think some explanation will help people who are new to the process. In a nutshell, we're going to heat the blade to about 1700 degrees and then dunk it in oil. That's it. That's all there is to it. But there are a few ways to botch it, so let me walk you through the process. First, we need to assemble some supplies. You don't need a forge or blacksmith tools, but you do need a propane torch. Almost any fairly inexpensive hardware store torch will do. Little tiny jeweler's torches will not work. The torches are fueled by a small portable propane tank. There are two common shapes, short and fat or tall and skinny. They're very similar in volume. The tall one holds 14 ounces while the fat one holds 16 ounces. I kind of like the fat ones for this purpose because they seem a little more stable when standing unsupported on your bench. However, either one will work. Incidentally, when you buy a tank of propane, you will see MAP gas tanks on the same shelf. MAP gas burns at a higher temperature, which is a slight advantage, but it costs about 3 times as much, and you don't need it for our purposes. If you already have it, then you can use it here, but don't buy it unless you need it for another job. The cheapest torches are really simple. They just have a nozzle and a small knob that turns the propane on and off. You have to ignite the torch manually. You can use an ordinary butane lighter or a welder's sparker. It's really not hard. A slightly more expensive version has a built-in sparker, and it ignites automatically with the push of a button. This push button start is very, very convenient. You need about 1.5 cups of oil. Any oil will do the job. I've tried motor oil, but I've stopped using it primarily because I don't like the smell when it gets hot. I now use peanut oil. It's cheap, readily available, and very inoffensive. You can use it over and over, so one small bottle lasts forever. You need a container to hold the oil. It should be stable and have a wide open top. It needs to be a little taller than your blade. I'm going to use a glass jar today so that you can see the process more easily, but a soup can or a coffee cup will work just as well. I've also used a paper cup, although I think this carries a small risk. Remember that oil will burn. It's quite unlikely to do so with this method, but never get careless with open flames and oil. Finally, you need pliers to hold the tool when it's heated. Any pliers will work, but I think that locking pliers like these vice grips are really perfect for this job, and they reduce the chance of dropping a red-hot piece of steel on your foot. Okay, now the recipe. Tool steel undergoes a major transformation at 1550 degrees. It changes its molecular and crystalline form into something much more rigid. If you then let it cool slowly, it will revert back to its original structure. But we are not going to let it cool slowly. We are going to heat it to about 1700 degrees and then plunge it in oil, causing the steel to freeze so rapidly that it has no chance to transform back. The oil plunge is called quenching. These very small tools pose a special problem, however. Watch how fast these very narrow blades lose their high temperature as soon as they are removed from the flame. As you can see, this thin blade loses over 100 degrees of temperature every second after it leaves the flame. For the oil quench to work correctly, steel needs to be above 1500 degrees when it hits the oil. Our strategy is to heat it up to about 1700 degrees and then work rapidly to get it into the oil as quickly as possible after moving it out of the flame before it cools to 1500 degrees. You have about 1.5 seconds. That turns out to be plenty of time to immerse the blade safely and accurately, but not enough time to fool around. I will show you the whole sequence in real time. Hold the blade so that as much of it as possible is immersed in the flame at the same time. You will notice that the thin tip will become red first, but we need the entire last inch of the blade to get to that color. How long this takes will vary based on the size of the torch flame you use. When the last inch of the blade is a bright orange color, you have reached about 1700 degrees. Don't move it just yet. Let it soak in this high heat for a few seconds while the molecular transformation proceeds. Now, plunge it down into the oil point first. It should go down vertically to minimize any warping. Do not stir the blade through the oil in the first 4 seconds. Stirring while the blade is still very hot also promotes warping. Just down and up for the first few seconds. Then leave it in the oil until it's cool enough to touch, about 20 seconds. Wipe off the excess oil and you're done with the hardening. It's that easy. The quenching process creates stresses within the steel. We will relieve those stresses by tempering, a process that also adds resilience. Heat the blades to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. You can use a kitchen oven or a toaster oven. You can obviously do all your blades at one time. Balancing the blades on an oven rack does not work very well, at least for me. I make a little tray out of folded aluminum foil. Put the tray with the blades in the cold oven, turn it on, and set it for 400 degrees. When it has reached that temp, then set a timer for 30 minutes. You will not be able to see any change in the blades during the process, but at the microscopic level, the crystalline structure is changing. After 30 minutes, take them out of the oven and quench them in water. The blades will be gray to black in color. Part of this is burnt oil from the first quenching. The rest, however, is a very thin layer of oxides of iron, and it's quite hard, and it clings tightly to the steel. You have to use abrasives to remove it. I rub it briskly with 320 wet or dry silicon carbide paper. Get all the black off, leaving a shiny, bright surface everywhere. If there are scratches visible, try to remove them with the 320 grit. Next, go over it thoroughly with 600 grit. You're done when the surface stops looking dull and begins to gleam. We're not looking for a mirror finish, but just no visible scratches. Incidentally, I use black silicon carbide paper principally because it's easy to find in very fine grit sizes, whereas aluminum oxide papers often end at 320 in many hardware stores. Okay, that's it. You've finished the heat treating. All that remains is to polish the blades and put an edge on them. Now, you can do that now, or you can wait until you've mounted the blade in the handle. I prefer to wait. In our next video, we'll put handles on these blades.